Make no mistake, democracy is on the ballot for all of us.
President Biden with a constant theme for Democrats throughout the midterm elections campaign. Polling stations are now just hours away from opening with control of both houses of Congress in the balance. So too could be Biden's agenda. So clearly a lot on the line tomorrow, so let's get right into it. In Columbus, Ohio, Republican strategist Jai Chabria, also a senior strategist for the Republican Senate candidate J.D. Vance. And in Washington, Karoun Demirjian, national security correspondent for the Washington Post, co-author of the book Unchecked. It is fantastic to have you with us here. Jay, I really want to start with you. You are in one of the marquee Senate races in Ohio. What are people telling you and your candidate on the doorstep?
Look, this is an election all about the economy. It's all about inflation. It's all about the economy, and also about people's personal security, how they feel at home, how they feel in their cities, how they feel that their kids are doing. All of these things are related, and this is something that the Democrats have kind of missed here in this country. They were hoping it was going to be about other issues, but it's not, and I'm going to predict a very, very strong Republican night tomorrow night here in the States.
Okay, so that's very optimistic for the Republicans there, Karoun. Is Jay right that the Democrats might lose the House, not just because it's almost a tradition with midterms for the party of the president to do that, but because of messaging mistakes?
There has been a debate over messaging issues. Democrats have bet that the issues of abortion, issues of the tenets of democracy, institutions being at stake have been getters, and there have been these issues with the Republicans messaging harder sometimes on matters of inflation, matters of pocketbook issues that hit close to home. And Democrats, some have been actually trying to counter those messages with their own platforms, but it's not been, it's been clashing, and it's not been playing out on a national scale.
And so it's interesting when you talk about abortion, because the Democrats seem to have a boost in the summer on abortion, on anger about Trump taking documents to Mar-a-Lago, on guns because of those horrible shootings in the summer. Did they just count on that sustaining people all the way to November in terms of talking points? Did they just not see what was happening?
I mean, I think these were invigorating messages, especially for the Democratic base at the time. And the idea was that builds and that builds and that builds and that becomes better. Also remember that the economic numbers, gas prices, et cetera, were actually improving in the late summer into the early fall. And then that's all started to take a turn. And these things are all about timing, right? We talk about October surprises in the United States all the time because things can change, circumstances can change in the weeks right before the election that all of a sudden make memories very short, make people start focusing on other issues, and make other matters and other crises start to rise up the level of what is somebody's number one concern. And that can start to affect not the diehards in the base, but the middle, the small middle, right? But the independent middle that can swing either way and really make a big difference in some of these races, especially in swing states.
So Adrienne, I'm gonna push back on that a little bit. That's like the common misnomer, and that's what the Washington D.C. folks think about this race. This was always going to be a very good Republican year. What you saw with the numbers over the summer was when the Dobbs decision was handed down from the Supreme Court, the base hardened for the Democrats, and they came home early. They started to say, we're going to vote Democratic. Then there was this large portion that was waiting and seeing, but you knew, and if you actually looked at the numbers, you knew that they were going to start to switch to the GOP. It's not about gas prices on a one-day swing or a week or not. People are struggling in this country to put food on their table. They're struggling to get their kids to school. And those are the issues that are driving people to the polls.
So as an outsider, it seems a bit strange that at least, this is on another topic here, at least 100 competitive candidates for various levels of government have openly questioned the results of the 2020 election. Some of these people will be in charge of elections next time. Jay, your candidate is one of those people who at one point openly doubted results of 2020.
Well,
I know this is not what you're talking about. Hang on a second. I know this is not what you're talking about, but a lot of people are, and I'm wondering how that sits with you.
Yeah. Well, first, that's a very nuanced thing that he's talked about that we can get into at some other point in terms of how he's addressed this issue. But this is really not what people are talking about. And I got to tell you this. It shows up very low on the polls. It shows up maybe fourth or fifth. And a big portion of them are worried about election integrity as well, too. It is something that is purely a media fabrication. The thing that is driving people 1, 2, and 3 is all economic issues, and then the one right after that is crime and safety. And those are the things that are driving people in the polls this year. And the democracy, the perils of democracy that the media likes to portray has nothing to do with this election.
Karoun,
speaking
I
as
feel
a
like
member-
you have something to say there.
Well, just because the accusation of media fabrication was out there. Look, the issues that actually drive voters and their emotions and what they choose to prioritize in their lives do not necessarily one-to-one match up with things that will be affected by the turnout, the results of various elections and what the stakes are as people are addressing these issues. It's not a surprise that there are various institutions of the American democracy that are being challenged or in peril. That goes across it cuts across different ways of society, but it is at stake in many of these elections. However, that does not necessarily mean that that's what voters are voting based on. There can be this disconnect between what the actual stakes are, what the results of it may be, and what those may hold in store in the future, and why people actually go out to the polls. And that's a difficult they don't always match. And that's just true of everything, right? Because people vote on what they feel matters to them in that moment. And these things about institutional tenets and the strength of those are longer term things that people don't necessarily feel affects them in their day-to-day right now lives as they're heading to the polls. But that doesn't mean it's a fabrication. It's still out there. It's still an element of what the end results are going to be.
All right, I'm going to sadly have to cut you both off there because we are running out of time, and I know we could talk about this forever. Jay and Karoun, thank you both for joining us. Appreciate it.
Thanks, Adrienne.